It's a lot for the nervous system to hold, as a woman, as a human, as a man. Knowing the levels of deep fracturing around this sexual misery program that we're running as humans, it's a lot to process. Not only are we learning about the absolute annihilation of innocence with our children, we're learning about the access of men in positions of trust, and how they're accessing ways of being able to abuse and manipulate their partners in unconscious ways. And combined, the patterning and the programming that we're watching and witnessing, and the overt nature of how disturbing these experiences are, make it very difficult to stay conscious with them. And for me personally, the deepest levels of disgust and rage that come up in me when I hear about these abuses and violations, it's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to hold. It's a lot to meet. But it needs a voice, and I need to have my own voice around that, as I encourage each and every one of you. The work I do always goes beyond the external act to a deeper level of patterning and a deep understanding of what the fracture point is in us as humans that causes us to behave in ways that we feel are supportive for our survival. And when I say supportive for our survival in this modern era, it means ways that help us to avoid our own pain. So addictive patterns of unconscious behavior that we do so that we don't have to feel the true pain that is within our bodies. So I suppose the question is, if these people are being motivated from an unconscious level of pain to perform these acts, where is that fracture? And as a species, how are we fracturing so deeply from our own humanity that this is even possible, that this is even happening? And so for me, I've been sitting with that, and I've been trying to feel into that, and it's complex and it's difficult because I don't have a lot of access to those patterns because it's not something that I am living, right? But if you look at the nature of those levels of abuse, it speaks to a very, very disempowered, in this case, man, a disempowered husband, and a disempowered being, a being that is disconnected from their soul essence when it comes to the abuses against children. So where is that deep powerlessness, that deep fracture from the divine, organically connected nature? And that question leads us to look at, how are these humans coming to be this way? Where are those fractures that are occurring in their early development that makes them susceptible to these patterns? And something that I feel as women we can make sure that we're looking at is making sure that our children are protected, making sure our young ones, our little boys and our little girls, are protected from the sexual misery program, making sure we're aware And the way we need to do that, first and foremost, is making sure that we're processed. So if you're holding any of the patterns of sexual abuse, by default, those patterns cross through generations. So if your father was sexually abused or your mother was sexually abused, the case of you, the rate of your likelihood of being also abused is very, very high. And I see this patterning all the time. I see children of parents that have been sexually abused that have not processed the deep pain and fear that's laid in their cellular body, and they've suppressed and they've locked it down, and they've developed these behaviors that cause them to move away from their own pain, but are often maladaptive. So that means that they're often the ones that become the perpetrators because they're trying to process in their bodies that level of pain. And then that passes on. And even if they're not perpetrating against their own children, they're turning a blind eye to the patterns of that perpetration because they have not dealt with that in themselves. So the pattern of the sexual misery program of where our innocence gets stolen, where we are the victims of coercion, domination, control in sexual abuse, is something that is linear. It comes through the lineage, and it's something that we need to work on so deeply. So if you've been a victim of that, we need to make sure that you are conscious of the impact that's had upon you. So you are not naive in your children having that same experience, or even in you unconsciously perpetuating that, either via porn or via unconsciously supporting the energetics of that pattern, or being in that state of abuse. This patterning is so important. The powerlessness that also comes is an important part to witness, because there's deep powerlessness that people hold that causes them to want to act out these experiences. It comes from a powerlessness that is embedded in our relationships as children to our caregivers, to the abandonment, to the abuse, to the shutdown, to the emotional neglect, to the physical neglect, to the feeling of being disconnected from self because we didn't feel true connection. And when we're in that disconnected, powerless state, we feel vulnerable to others impacting us. And when we don't know how to create a power within, then we act in ways that create power over others. And when we're creating power over others, we are in that perpetrator zone. And we're in the perpetrator zone because we're being in the victim zone. And that co-creates the unconscious patterning of this. So when we're hearing about these millions of men learning how to drug and rape their wives, we're looking at an epidemic of powerlessness. And we're looking at that deep fracture of where these men lost their connection to their soul, to their power, to their sense of agency in the world, and where that fracture has taken them in their experience of wanting to have power over. And when we look at this patterning and we look at our responsibility as humans to nurture and raise children and raise communities that are connected, we have to look at that part within ourselves first. Because if we've brushed over and we've neglected our sexual abuse, our powerlessness, our sense of deep unconsciousness, then we're going to act out those patterns. And humanity is acting out those patterns on repeat because when they're acted out, there's an access point for transformation, for seeing and revealing and showing. So when we're inundated with these ways that humans are being with each other, and from the very top levels of the people that are ruling this world, how they are being, and the filter down of the acceptability of that chronic abuse, we need to take a good hard look where that lies in us. We need to do the work. We need to transcend those patterns within us and around us. And we need to support others to do the same. We need to see and identify when that wounding, when that unconsciousness is being carried out. And we need to have our own agency, our own power in implementing our own value, our value of decency, our value of knowing and intuition when things aren't okay, our value of protection, our value of speaking up and taking care of other people's children when the parent isn't able to, other supporting people to process when they can't get there on their own, supporting agency that can actually create a safe place for people. We need to be able to be making these changes on the ground level with the humans that we're around. And we need to be very, very clear that it's not okay for us. It's not okay for me that there is this dominance of humans that creates these perpetration patterns where one human has the access to abuse another human. That is not okay on any level. And the fact that it comes down to our innocent children, there's nothing that's okay in that for me. And I just want to be clear on that and speak out on that, because we need to be rewriting our whole construct of this society from all levels, all facets. And this is the time to do it, because it's being exposed. It's on the top side. We cannot turn away from that. Yeah, it's time. It's enough. It's enough on all levels.